There we go. So I'm not 100% sure how this is going to work, but we're going to fake it till we make it. So, as promised, we are going to finish A Thanksgiving Nightmare because I don't think it's fair that you guys don't know the ending yet. And it's taken me so long to try to get this other half of it uploaded. I don't understand why I'm having so many issues with this. I think it's because I'm doing something I'm not familiar with. It happens. So, we are going to, if I can get this going. Oh, wait. Okay. All right. So, I really wish you guys could see my screen. I don't know if there's a way to do my screen or not. Hold on. What if... I don't think it's going to let me. It's not going to let me. So, we're going to do our best, right? As we fall. Alright. I'm going to find somehow to keep you guys from sliding and falling. Okay. So, we're going to get into A Thanksgiving Nightmare Part 2. And let's get into it. Hi there. How are you doing? I hope you're doing good. My name is Angel, and I like all things mysterious. Last week, we left off with, and it wasn't even last week, it was what, the week before last? Yeah, because last week I couldn't get anything going either, so I did a short because I'm having issues with this. I don't understand. So the week before last, we left off with Angel and Marshall interrupted by knocking. Let's get into part 2. I jump off the bed as Marshall ran out into the hallway and down the stairs. I grab a t-shirt and jeans and quickly get dressed. I hear Marshall downstairs and then the door swings open and I listen to him running around the house yelling. Come on, motherfucker, be a real man. What are you, scared? I came outside and looked around. And then it hit me. The abandoned barn on my property. This person must be hiding in the barn. It makes sense since no one's checked it yet. It's deep in the woods around my house and not many people know it's there. I run over to Marshall and whisper, the barn. He has to be in the barn. Marshall looks at me. What barn? It's deep in the woods. Me and my sister used to go on adventures in these woods. We asked Grandpa about it, but he said that we shouldn't play in there. Marshall, show me where it is. I lead Marshall through the woods to the abandoned barn. Marshall runs over and opens the barn doors. Standing in the middle of the barn was a man wearing a clown mask. That is some freaky shit, guys. Oh my god, it's a fucking clown. I scream and run and head back to the house. Marshall runs into the barn and tackles the clown, and they wrestle around, occasionally swinging and landing some blows. I run back to the house to grab my phone and call Bill. Bill answers his phone. Angel. Bill, Marshall is fighting with a clown in the abandoned barn on my property. Hurry, come quickly. I hang up the phone and run back outside towards the barn. Marshall and the clown man are still fighting. I look over at the barn and spot a shovel. I run over, grab the shovel, and run up behind the guys while they are fighting. I swing the shovel and hit the clown, who falls to the ground like a sack of potatoes. Bill pulls up with lights and a siren just as the clown lands on the ground. Bill jumps out of his car and runs to the barn where we all are. As soon as Marshall saw Bill, Marshall backed away from the clown. Bill runs over, flips the guy over, and cuffs him. Marshall runs over to me, puts his arm around me, and pulls me close. Bill stands the clown up and takes his mask off. It was my ex. Bill, it's Matthew. Bill walks Matthew over to his car and puts him in the back seat. Bill walks over to Marshall and me. Do you guys want to press charges? Yes, I do. Put him away as long as you can. Bill gets in the car, turns the lights off, and drives away with Matthew in the back. Me and Marshall run back into the house, and Marshall checks all the doors and windows. While Marshall is downstairs, I head upstairs to put my pajamas back on and call my sister. She is never going to believe what I'm about to tell her. Marshall enters my bedroom as I get my pajamas on and looks at me funny. What's that look for? Marshall looks down. Marshall says, I should probably get going home now that your stalker's in jail now. I look at him. I say, just because he's in jail doesn't mean that I don't want you here. I do want you here. It would help me feel safe if you stayed. Marshall looks at me and smiles. But I have to call my sister and tell her what happened. Marshall nods and sits on my bed. The phone rings a few times, and my sister answers the phone. My sister, hello? Heather, you are never going to believe what happened here. Heather says, huh? What are you talking about? I say, well, Bill just took Matthew to jail for stalking me. He was knocking on the doors and hiding in the abandoned barn on my property. I don't know what would have happened if it wasn't for Marshall. Wait, what? Who's Marshall? Angel, you haven't been there that long. How did Matthew find you already? I say, I honestly don't know. The only thing I can think of is someone telling him. You know, he has friends in high places. I know, but Marshall interrupts. What if he put a tracker on your car? I'm going to go check your car. I'll be right back. My sister says, who is that? I tell her that was Marshall. He's a long story, but I like him. I will tell you all about him at Thanksgiving dinner tomorrow night. Are you still coming? Sister says, yes, of course. I'm still coming. Do you need me to bring anything? I tell her, no. I put a grocery delivery in the other day. I got enough to feed an army. Me and my sister talked for a while, catching up on this past week. My sister says, wow, a lot has happened in a week there. I tell her, I know. I thought I was going crazy with these knocks. Well, until it happened when Marshall was here too. My sister says, have you talked to Dad yet? I tell her, no. I figured he would be sleeping and I would call him tomorrow. Just then, Marshall walks back into my bedroom and sits on the bed next to me. Marshall says, I found this little magnetic tracker underneath your car. My sister says, fucking Matthew. I don't know why he can't just leave you alone. I tell her, I don't know. Especially since he was sleeping with that receptionist at a shop. My sister says, ew, she's so nasty. I tell her, oh well, not my problem. Well, hey, let me let you go. I'm going to take my ass to bed. I have to wake up early to start Thanksgiving dinner. My sister tells me, okay, I love you. I tell her I love you too. I put my phone down, turned off the light, and climbed into bed. Marshall climbs under the covers and cuddles up next to me. I'm so excited to see my family tomorrow, I tell Marshall. They're coming up for Thanksgiving dinner, and Thanksgiving just wouldn't have been the same without them. Marshall whispers, I have to go home in the morning to help my mom cook dinner too. As we fall asleep, I think about what crazy things have happened since I moved here. The following day, I woke up and Marshall was already up and had even made coffee. Marshall smiles when I walk into the kitchen. Marshall says, it's been a long time since I've slept next to a woman, and I haven't slept that well in a long time. My phone rings. It's Bill. I answer the phone. Hey, Bill, how's everything going? Bill says, well, Angel, Matthew called his dad, who's currently on his way here with a lawyer. And I tell him, Bill, this is ridiculous. He always gets away no matter what he does. Bill says, Angel, I promise I will hold him as long as I can, legally. But I would feel better if you let me post one of my men at your house to keep an eye out. I tell him, okay, Bill, go ahead. Do everything in your power to protect me, because if he gets out, best believe he's gonna come for me. Bill says, I know, Angel. I will call the judge and see if we can't expedite his trial before that fancy lawyer gets here. I tell him, thanks for the update, Bill. I'll talk to you later, Bill. Bill says, bye, Angel. Marshall looks at me. Marshall says, I don't want you to worry. I will do whatever I have to keep you safe. I tell him, thank you, Marshall. You're terrific, and I appreciate everything you have done for me. Are you going to join us, Lucy? Here's my baby. Here's my baby. Here's my... I know. We did get joined. Look it. Here's my baby. I tell him, thank you, Marshall. You're terrific, and I appreciate everything that you've done for me. Marshall says, Angel, I don't think you understand how much you've changed things for me. I feel good again. You bring the good out in me. Marshall says, what time is your family going to be here? I tell him, well, my sister's always fashionably late. But we said 5 o'clock. Why do you ask? Marshall says, well, I know we just met, but I would like you and your family to join me and my mom for dinner. We can leave your car here and have your sister just come to my mom's house. Go ahead and call your sister and tell her we will text her the address. I'm going to call my mom. I tell Marshall, you're so amazing. How can I ever pay you back? Marshall says, just spending time with you is enough for me. We began packing up my food into Marshall's car. When we arrived at his house, his mom greeted us at the door. Betty says, Marshall, I was afraid you wouldn't make it home to help me cook. Oh my, who's this pretty young lady? Marshall says, Mom, this is Angel. Her stalker ex tried to break into her house last night while I was there, and I helped get him arrested. Betty says, Marshall, I'm so proud of you. I'm glad you're finally coming out of your shell. Betty turns to me. Betty says, hi, Angel. My name is Betty, but you can call me Mom. And I tell her, nice to meet you. Can I help you cook too? Betty says, yes, of course, dear. I see you guys went grocery shopping as well. I tell her, the stores are closed, but my kitchen's always open. Betty laughs and starts grabbing pots and pans. Marshall kisses my cheek. Marshall tells me, hey, I'm gonna go jump in the shower and change, and then I'll help you ladies, okay? We both nod in agreement. My phone rang as me and Betty were cooking. It's my sister. I answer the phone. Hey, Heather. Heather says, hey, so we're here. Should we come to the door? I tell her, yes, I will meet you at the door. Marshall returned to the kitchen just as I was about to meet my sister at the door. Betty says, "Marshall, honey, let Angel's family in. They just arrived." Marshall says, "Okay, Mom." Marshall opens the door and heads out to greet my family. My sister, dad, and nephew get out of the car. Marshall says, "Hi, I'm Marshall. Welcome to my house. Please let me help you carry stuff in." My sister says, "Oh, so you're Marshall. I still need to get the scoop on you from Angel." Marshall laughs. Marshall says, "Well, we have plenty of time for that." As they all come into the house, they head into the kitchen where me and Betty were. Betty smiles. Betty says, "Hi, everyone. Call me Mom." If I had known it would be more than just me and Marshall, I would have made more food. I tell her, "I told Marshall we were bringing all my food. It's the least we could do." As the day progressed, everyone helped make dinner. As we were preparing dinner and setting the table, the topic of how Matthew found me came up. Marshall says, "Well, that was a lucky catch. While Angel was on the phone talking to Heather, I was thinking of how he could have found her." A tracker popped in my head. I looked all over her car, and when I checked underneath, that's where I spotted it. My dad says, "Yeah, that was a real lucky catch there, Marshall." Dad says, "So what do you do for work?" Marshall says, "Currently, I deliver for the pizzeria. It's not much, but it's honest work. And besides, that's how I met Angel." Marshall winks at me. My sister says, "It makes sense since Angel loves to order out." Everyone laughs. Then my phone rings. It's Bill again. And I answer the phone. "Hi, Bill. What's up?" Bill says, "Angel. Matthew got out of jail. His lawyer talked to the judge, and long story short, we had to release him. I'm so sorry. Please tell me that you're not alone." I tell him, "No, I'm not at home, and I'm with my family." Bill cuts me off. Bill says, "Angel, don't say too much. Matthew could be listening. He was released a little while ago, and he and his dad were pissed. Is he still in town? I don't know. But you need to be careful. And whatever you do, don't go outside." I tell him, "Okay, Bill, I hear you. I'm not planning on going anywhere right now. We're getting ready to eat dinner." Bill says, "Good. I'm placing some guys outside your house for extra protection. And if I hear anything else, I will call you." I tell him, "Thank you so much, Bill. I appreciate everything you do to help. I'll talk to you later. Bye." Bill says, "Bye, Angel." After I got off the phone with Bill, I helped set the table and serve dinner. We all sat at the table and talked and had a good time. It was a good Thanksgiving with family and friends. As things were winding down, my family started preparing to return home. Marshall says, "Are you guys sure we can't talk you into staying?" My sister says, "No, we'll be okay." I tell her, "Well, be careful and call me when you get home." She says, "Are you going home?" I mean, eventually I have to go home. And besides, I'm not living my life in fear. No. This is my short story I wrote. I'm so sorry. Nope, this is my short story that I wrote. I'm doing the second half of it because I'm having issues trying to get it to upload to YouTube. I've had so many issues. I think it's because of the first half of the story. I'm sorry. It's just my short story I wrote. This really didn't happen. Anyways. Okay, so my sister says, "Well, no, I don't expect you to, but I don't want you to be alone with that crazy ex of yours free on the streets." Marshall says, "Angel, you can stay here. You don't have to go home." And I tell him, "But I have to work tomorrow. It's one of the busiest times of year, Black Friday. I can't let Tom down. And besides, If Matthew comes for me, it's probably going to be there. Wait a minute. I call Bill. Bill says, hello? Is everything okay, Angel? I tell him, Bill, do you still have a couple guys at my house? Bill says, yes, why? I tell him, Bill, I think Matthew broke into the bank a couple days ago and stole that money. He did it to prove that he could. Bill says, but the man wore a mask and gloves. We can't prove that. I tell him, yes, we can. If we catch him with the money and match the bills to the ones that were stolen. Bill says, that would work. But how are we going to do that? I tell him, I think I have an idea, but no one's going to like it. I knew the only way we could catch him with the money was to use myself to get back into his life. Well, make him think that anyways. Marshall says, Angel, I don't think you should do this. I tell him, I don't have a choice if I want him locked up longer than a couple of hours. But I'm going to need your help too, Marshall. He tells me, what do you need me to do? I tell him, well, I need you to take me home. Then I'll contact Matthew and tell him I want to talk. My sister says, well, I'm not going anywhere now. My dad says, I don't want you to do this alone. And I tell him, if anyone is with, he will only get suspicious. This is the only way to be done with him. We decided my family would just stay at Marshall's house instead of going home. They wanted to be close until this was all over. As planned, Marshall took me home, dropped me off, kissing me on the cheek. Marshall tells me, be careful. I get out of Marshall's car. I'm so done with all of this. I walked into my house and noticed that the door wasn't locked. I immediately got nervous. I looked out the front window, saw the marked car parked in front of my house, remember the cop car is there, and wondered how he avoided the cops and snuck into the house. I went upstairs to my bedroom and opened the door. There, sitting on my bed, was Matthew. Matthew says, well, it's about damn time you brought your fucking whore ass home. I saw your little boyfriend drop you off. He must have to get home to mommy. I tell him, shut up, Matthew. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I don't have a boyfriend. Matthew says, oh, you think that I'm blind or dumb. He's been here with you the past couple nights. And I tell him, he's just a friend. He's going through a tough time right now. Matthew says, I would say so. He just got out of prison for attempted murder. I tell him, wait, how do you know that? Matthew says, oh, I bet little lover boy hasn't told you what happened. Well, I had some friends look into Marshall. He spent the last 15 years in prison. I can't believe that you fell for his shit. He was a part of a gang up in Detroit. He was known for slanging drugs. He had a girlfriend named Tiffany, but Marshall caught her cheating with his best friend. He pulled out a gun and shot his friend several times, but somehow he survived. I can't talk. Hold on. Drink break. But somehow he survived. Marshall was later caught and sentenced to 15 years. While he was in prison, his girlfriend left him for his friend when she got pregnant. She has since married the friend, but put an order of protection against Marshall. I tell him, I don't know what to say. Matthew says, he was released on parole and moved into his mom's house. Do you know he violated his parole when he hit me? And I tell him, what are you talking about? You were stalking me, and we caught you in my barn. Matthew says, I can't just let you go with some stranger. I've loved you for years. He can never love you as I've loved you. And I tell him, you haven't even known me for years. You've only known me for a couple of months. Matthew says, I saw you a few years ago. It was a coincidence that we ran into each other at the bar. I tell him, wait, you stalked me before we dated? Matthew says, I wouldn't say stalk, but I saw you a few times. I tell him, why did you set my car on fire? Matthew says, I was afraid you would leave And then you did. But now I'm here, so you don't have to fear what Marshall could do to you. This is going nowhere. If I don't do something drastic, he will do something to me. I can tell because he's getting pissed at me. I tell him, Matthew, I loved you. Then you cheated on me with every woman you came into contact with. You have hurt me more times than I can count. Matthew says, them women don't mean anything to me. I tell him, what about the receptionist at your shop? Matthew says, Jessie? Jessie does favors for me. Although, she just told me that she's pregnant. It doesn't mean it's mine or anything. I'm here for you. I love you, and I want to marry you. I tell him, what is wrong with you? You got another woman pregnant, and then you come here and ask me to marry you? Matthew says, there isn't any proof that that baby is mine. I tell him, that can be proved with a DNA test, Matthew. Matthew says, if Jessie is the problem, I can make her disappear. What the actual fuck is wrong with Matthew? Is he delusional? On drugs? I don't know, but I need to change this vibe quickly. I tell him, you would do that for me? Matthew says, I would do anything for you. Matthew walks over to me, puts his arms around me, and pulls me in for a hug. He lifts my head and kisses me. Then I pull away. I tell him, Matthew, I don't have any money to move back. I sunk all my money into this house. I'm stuck here. Matthew says, babe, I brought money with me to take you back. Money isn't an issue. I tell him, well, I have to work at the bank tomorrow morning. Matthew says, fuck that little hillbilly-ass bank. I've seen it. It couldn't keep a kid out. I tell him, what do you mean? Matthew says, I have money. Why do you care about that bank? I tell him Tom was friendly enough to give me a job, even though I lacked teller experience. I tell him, let me go to work tomorrow, and tell him I'm moving back. It's the least I can do for him. Matthew says, well, if you insist, I just can't understand why you can't leave now. I tell him, meet me at my bank at 5 with the money, and then I will leave with you. Matthew says, promise? I tell him, promise, but I need to sleep. I have a busy day tomorrow. I lean in and kiss Matthew, and he hugs me. Matthew says, I have a few things to take care of anyway. I'll talk to you tomorrow. As soon as I knew he was gone, I sent Bill a text message telling him of tomorrow's plan. I could barely sleep because of the adrenaline rush I was currently feeling. So, I sent a text message to Marshall. I tell him, so the plan is going without a hitch, and he doesn't suspect a thing. Marshall says, did you already give Bill the heads up? I tell him I did. He will show up shortly after I finish work. Tomorrow is going to be one for the books. But Matthew has friends all over. He told me what happened and how you went to jail. Why didn't you tell me? Marshall says, I wanted to, but I didn't want to scare you off. I meant what I said. I ask him, have you talked to your ex since you've been out? Marshall says, I called her when I got out, and she told me she married my best friend and had a couple kids. It made me angry, which is where I was when you met me, but you do bring out the best in me. I ask him, do you still love her? Marshall says, I don't know. I feel my heart sink. If he still loves her, how could he ever fully love me? I say, that was unfair of me to ask, especially when I have a lot of shit going on right now. You could have easily just left me to deal with all this by myself. But you didn't. Marshall says, I want to protect you. I tell him, I think I should go to bed now. Marshall says, have a good night. I wish I were with you. I tell him, you have a good night as well. I'm glad I'm alone now. I need time to think and process all this. The following day, I woke up and got into the shower. While I'm in the shower, I thought about what happened with Marshall and where we stand. I finish showering and get dressed. As I was leaving, I looked around the house. When I came here, I thought I would spend all my time alone. And honestly, I haven't. I arrive at work and pulled Tom aside to tell him the plan. He agreed, and we set up for work for the day. We were swamped, and before I knew it, 5 o'clock rolls around. I grab all my stuff. I say, hey Tom, I'm gonna head out, okay? Tom says, Angel, please be careful. I tell him I will. I head out to my car. I started getting really nervous as I approached the parking lot. I noticed a car sitting in the parking lot, and it was running. All the windows, can't even talk. See, you guys miss all this stuff because I edited it all out, but I swear to God I can't talk or read my own story either. all the windows were tinted, and I couldn't see who was sitting in the car, but I assumed it was Matthew. As I got closer to my car, Matthew stepped out of his car and started walking towards me. I reach my car and stop. Matthew approaches me, looking very concerned. He leans in and tells me to get into his car. I look around and look back at him. My heart began to race as Matthew got closer to me. Panic set in as I realized that Matthew had a gun tucked into his pants. I say, you want me to leave my car here at work? Matthew says, we have to go now. I say, what's going on? Why are you acting like this? Matthew says, just get in the fucking car now, Angel. I'm done playing games with you. I came here to bring you back, and that's what I'm doing now. In a desperate attempt to protect myself, I took off running. Just as I was about to turn the corner, Matthew grabbed my arm and dragged me over to his car. I tried to stall to give the police time to get here. Where are they? I say, Matthew, calm down, baby. We have our whole lives. Let's enjoy this moment. Matthew says, we have to go now. I say, why? What's the rush? Matthew says, we have a plane to catch. I say, plane? You didn't say anything about getting on a plane. You know I'm scared of planes. Matthew says, you'll want to take advantage of this one, though. I say, why is that? I would rather die than get on a plane. Matthew says, well, that's what's going to happen if you don't get your fucking ass on that plane. Matthew says, like I said, I came here to bring you back, and that's what I'm doing. And if you don't get on that plane, I'm going to leave your dead body at your dad's house. Matthew says, any more questions? I shake my head no and look down. I wish the police would hurry up and get here. I want Marshall here too. Matthew opens the passenger door and pushes me into the car, shutting the door. Just as Matthew was walking around the car to the driver's side, Marshall comes around the corner, armed with a baseball bat. A fierce struggle ensues, with Marshall fighting to protect me from Matthew. It's my short story. The two men grappled. I watched in horror, torn between fear and gratitude for Marshall's bravery. Finally, Marshall managed to overpower Matthew, pinning him to the ground. Cop cars pull into the parking lot from all sides surrounding Matthew's car. Keep looking up my own story. Matthew turns around and looks at me. Matthew says, I'm sorry. I told you I would take care of Jesse. I just wanted a fresh start with you. Bill says, put your hands up, Matthew. Matthew turns around and acts like he is going to pull a gun out of his pocket. Bill shoots Matthew in the leg, dropping him to the ground. Matthew rolls over and fires one shot at Bill, hitting him in the arm. One of the other officers fires a shot into Matthew's head, killing him instantly. As the adrenaline subsided, I realized the depth of Marshall's heroism and the bond that had formed between them. I sit in the car in shock at what happened before me. Bill opens the passenger side door and helps me out of the vehicle. Me and Bill walked over to Marshall. As we got closer, I ran to Marshall. He hugs me tight and kisses me on the forehead. Marshall says, I'm so glad you're safe. say, I can't believe it ended like that. Bill says, Angel, he was going down for life. He killed a young lady named Jessie. Bill says, we found her in a hotel room that Matthew checked out. When we left here last night, we gathered that he took a plane back to Illinois, met up with Jessie in a hotel room, killed her, and took a plane back here. We had him. We think he was desperate. I tell him it's my fault. I was trying to make him think we were getting back together, and I brought her up. He mentioned that she was pregnant, but said that there wasn't any proof it was his baby. Marshall says it sounds like he was sick in the head. Bill says, well, now he has a bullet in the head. I tell him I have to call my sister. Marshall says, better yet, I'm going to take you to her. In the side. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? You're interrupting the story. Anyways, back to the story. Inside the living room of Marshall's house, I say, that was the craziest shit I've ever experienced. I thought for sure I was going to get killed today. Matthew told me if I didn't get on the plane, he would kill me. My sister says, I'm glad you could stall long enough for the cops to get there. I tell her, here's the kicker. They were there. They stayed out of sight so as not to spook Matthew. Marshall was there too. I kept thinking about how I wished he could rescue me again like he did the other night. Marshall says, I wasn't going to let anything happen to you. Me and Bill had our plan. Marshall smiles and winks at me. As the night got later, everyone started to head to bed. Betty had already made up beds for everyone. Marshall grabs my hand and leads me outside to my car. He opened the passenger side door for me and helped me inside. He gets on the driver's side and starts the car. He turns and looks at me. Marshall says, I just wanted a moment alone to talk to you. I say, I'm still trying to process everything that has happened. Marshall says, I would hate to give you more to talk about or think about, but the situation made me realize that life is short. I have an amazing woman in front of me, and I don't want to lose you. I say, I don't want to lose you either. Marshall says, I just wanted to see how you feel about me. I know my past came out, but that's not who I am now. Can you see a future with me? I look at Marshall and get lost in his eyes. He stares deep into my eyes, leans in, and kisses me. And I say, I can't imagine my future with anyone else. In the aftermath of the chaos, me and Marshall found solace in each other's company. We spent the rest of the evening sharing stories, laughter, and a newfound sense of gratitude for our lives. I couldn't help but feel that this Thanksgiving had brought me something unexpected and beautiful amidst the horror. Days turned into weeks, and me and Marshall's connection grew more assertive. We supported each other through the healing process, and our friendship blossomed into something more. Together, we faced our fears and rebuilt our lives, finding strength in each other's presence. Years later, as we sat around the Thanksgiving table, surrounded by loved ones, I couldn't help but reflect on the twists and turns that had brought me to this moment. I raised my glass, toasting to the unexpected blessings from the darkest times. Little did I know that Marshall had one more surprise in store. My heart skips a beat as he got down on one knee with a glimmering ring. The shocking ending to my Thanksgiving horror story was not one of fear, but of love and a future filled with happiness. And on that note, that is the end of a Thanksgiving nightmare. And as promised, we're also going to get into some Christmas horror stories, but I had to finish my story. I had to. And I feel awful that YouTube is blocking me from getting this other half of my story up, because it just kind of makes it a little harder to tell the story if I can't show you guys my screen too. I don't know. Next time I'll think about it more before I write another story. But let's get into some Christmas horror stories. So I have to go here. I have to think, which one was it? I thought it was the abandoned girl. I think it's the abandoned girl. I'm trying to remember where I left off last year, because I started these last year Christmas time. So we're gonna finish this one. I like finishing books. I hate leaving things unfinished. Drives me insane. Anyways, so now we're gonna get into some Christmas horror stories. This one's called The Abandoned Girl. Stacy hadn't been back to her childhood neighborhood, much alone the house, in a long time. As she slammed on the brakes, she remembered how she used to be like that, running around the streets unoccupied. She paused for a moment to let the kids look over her shoulder before resuming her driving. She pulled up at her house not even a few minutes later. A large tree stood in front of it, giving off cozy and pleasant feelings despite the sunny weather. She got out of her car and walked over to the door after unbuckling her seatbelt and looking over the home from the car for a minute. Okay, that doesn't make sense to me. It wasn't that she had forgotten about them. It was just that she couldn't bring herself to return home after her father's death. Oh, dude, I feel that. Because, I lost my mom in June, and I still have a hard time going to my parents' house. That shit's hard. She was so close to him that she considered him a best friend. She paused in front of the front door, letting out a long sigh before summoning the confidence to knock with her balled fist. She waited for someone to answer the door while humming the lyrics of a song that had been stuck in her mind since it was released. She was even more astonished when it wasn't the person she had expected. "Excuse me, but who are you?" Standing in front of her, a short, voluptuous lady with her curly hair done up in a low ponytail inquired. Stacy Arlington. You can give me the name of your dog and I still have no idea who you are." Who says that? The lady responded, then walked into the house, slamming the door behind her firmly. As she walked back into the short driveway, she pulled out her phone to contact her mother. This aroused even more concerns in her mind. She knew it was a poor idea not to phone ahead before heading home for the holidays, but she figured it would be a wonderful surprise. So, I don't know if you guys listened to my Christmas horror stories from last year, but these stories, off the wall. I'm telling you, you're not even going to have no idea where this is going, because I already don't. There was some last time. Crazy. Let's see. Blah, blah, blah. Especially when it had been a long time since they had seen each other. Her mother waited a long time to pick up the phone, but eventually someone on the other end answered. "Hello? Who am I speaking with?" says the speaker. The person smiled and said hello. "Mom, my name is Stacy, and I'd like to introduce myself," she stated her case. "I've never met a Stacy," the person on the other end of the phone said quickly. If this was an early April Fool's joke, it was clearly no longer amusing to her. "Please, Mom, don't include yourself in this. My name is Stacy, and I'm your daughter. Look, I know I haven't visited in a while since I haven't been a nice child, but please don't." The other person on the line had already cut off before she could finish her explanation. "Look, Stacy, or whatever you are, I have no idea who you are. I have a daughter, and her name is not Stacy. Please don't phone this number again. If you'll excuse me, I have a supper to prepare." The other party then hung up, leaving her to dry. She stood there, disoriented and perplexed, peering about blankly at the kids on their bikes. She didn't know where else to go, so after standing in a stranger's driveway like a lunatic, she returned to her car and drove to a local cafe, which she used to frequent as a teen. Surprisingly, she remembered the roads as they were yesterday, and the diner didn't seem to have changed much when she arrived and parked the car. She stepped out of the car and walked into the diner, where she sat on one of the stools at the counter. She looked around and noticed that the restaurant was rather busy, even on a holiday, with servers pacing back and forth with trays full of meals ready to be given to customers. While waiting for a server to come by and take her order, she pulls out her phone and scrolls through it. She was taken off guard as she looked up as a server arrived in front of her, much to her dismay. Or, to put it even more dramatically, an old boyfriend she dated many years ago. Stacy? Arlington? Stacy? Is this, in fact, you? The tan-skinned boy, whose hair obscured half of his face, yet allowed her to recognize him. Her first heartbreak was difficult to forget. Jake, hello, it's been a long while, she smiled, as if it didn't affect her at all. As if, why should it? It had been a long time, and she had developed to the point where she could even recall the guy who had slept with multiple ladies at school while they were dating. Jake agreed. Yeah, it has. How did you end up here? She was undecided as to whether or not to tell him the truth, given their past. On the other hand, he might be the one person who can help her forget about all her troubles. Well, I was planning on visiting my family for the holidays, but they weren't available, she gave an explanation. He arched an eyebrow at her as he poured coffee into a cup and handed it to her. Wait, you didn't know? She shrugged and took a sip from the glass, mouthing a thank you. Do you know what? She inquired. Oh my goodness, how long has it been since your last visit that you haven't noticed? As she pressed on, her tolerance was wearing thin. Do you know what, Jake? She didn't give up. He sighed and leaned his elbows on the counter, a heavy frown on his face as he faced her. They had relocated some time ago to a different town. They claimed that following your father's death, they couldn't bear living here again. I honestly believed they'd say, Stacy, I'm very sorry. That's the end of that story. See, this is what I'm talking about. Didn't even, I don't know. Anyway. Excuse me. I forgot how to drink. Hate when I forget how to drink. It's the worst. Anyways. Sorry. God, I gotta remember how to drink sometimes. Anyways, on that note, we're almost an hour in. I hate to keep you guys. I appreciate you spending time with me. And to hear the other half of my Thanksgiving nightmare story that I wrote, and to listen to at least one Christmas horror story, right? So, but anyways, on that note, I hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you guys in the next one. You guys take care and have a good one. Bye.